Next, here in France, a heated debate last night as the leader of the far-right National Rally Party and a representative from the Left New Popular Front coalition faced off with current Prime Minister Gabriel Attal. Attal representing the Renaissance Party of President Emmanuel Macron, which opinion polls show is trailing in third place. There was a raucous debate as that debate went on. Here's Attal.
I don't understand this proposition which you haven't costed. Why should a 31-year-old worker have to pay taxes, but a 29-year-old trader shouldn't? Why should this be a general rule for all under 30s? If we listen to you, Kylian Mbappe shouldn't have gone to Madrid. He should have stayed here, because with your rules, he would have been exempt from paying taxes. It makes no sense. Tax justice means paying according to your income.
For more analysis on that debate, I'm joined here by France 24 reporter Clovis Casali. Has been following this breakneck election campaign for us. Clovis, President Macron and business leaders, in fact, have been lumping the far right and this left coalition together, saying each one represents a grave threat, especially for the French economy. We're getting some analysis on that. What has been the response to the left's proposal so far?
Well, during the campaign and that debate, the left wing was called, the plans of the left wing in terms of business, economics, were called unreasonable, unfeasible. So what are these measures the left wing alliance is putting forward? First, raising minimum wage to 1,600 euros after tax. That's a 200 euro hike. Also cancelling the pension reform of Emmanuel Macron, and also a free canteen in schools. There are many other measures, of course. They've said, the left wing, that it would cost 25 billion euros this year and then 100 billion euros next year.
Not cheap.
Not cheap. How are they going to finance that? By increasing taxes for the wealthier parts of French society and also businesses. But now you've got some 300 economists, left-wing economists, who have signed an open letter in the Nouvelle Obs, a French magazine, saying basically we need to support the left wing's manifesto. We believe in it. Among those signing this open letter, you've got Thomas Piketty, who's a very well-known economist around the world, best-selling author. Another man who signed, there are many women, of course, like Julia Cage, another economist. One man who signed this letter is called Gabriel Zucman. And why is it interesting? Because he specialized in global inequality, and he's just released a report. It was commissioned by the G20 under Brazil's presidency. And he advocates, like the other economists we just mentioned, taxing more the wealthier parts of society. And he thinks, with this report, he's saying that the world should tax 2% billionaires across the world. The wealthier parts of society who have, I quote, gigantic tax privilege. Let's take a listen to Zucman talking about this report commissioned by the G20. And I chose this soundbite because it basically sums up the views of the economists signing the open letter and backing the left wing's manifesto here in France. Here's Zucman.
For a very long time, the idea that we could agree at an international level on common forms of taxation was considered a dream, a utopia. This changed fundamentally in 2021 when over 130 countries agreed on the principle of a minimum 15% tax on the profits of multinational companies, which was inadequate in many respects, but nevertheless marked the first time that an agreement had been reached on a common minimum tax rate. And so it shattered the deep-rooted idea that tax competition is a kind of law of nature, a kind of inevitability.
And the 300 or so economists supporting the left wing here in France want to tax more the wealthier parts of society in France and companies, but also internationally. And that's why Gabriel Zucman's also signing this open letter we just mentioned.
Raising revenues to invest more in France, their plan there. So one especially important part of policy missing from this debate, in fact, was foreign policy, wasn't it?
Bit of a shame, really, with candidates not talking about foreign policy, so important, especially because if you're talking about soaring prices for energy, diminishing purchasing power in France, it's also due not only, but it's due to the war in Ukraine, to Russia closing the tap. Russia's playing a key part, of course, in those energy prices going up. They're not the only ones. Companies could have done maybe a bit more to try to limit those price increases for consumers in France. But nevertheless, Russia, it should have been mentioned in that debate. And the National Rally, the French far right, for instance, has been heavily criticized for its ties with Russia in the past, with Marine Le Pen going to Moscow to meet Vladimir Putin in 2017.
Taking loans from Russia, indeed.
Taking loans from Russian banks to finance the party, even though the National Rally, Front National at the time, said that it couldn't get loans from French banks, therefore had to turn to Russian banks. Nevertheless, then you've got the centrist bloc, Gabriel Attal in the debate, the Prime Minister. He's got a very clear stance on Russia, the same as President Macron. You need to stand firmly opposed to Russia's current conduct with Vladimir Putin, of course. We're not at war with the Russian people, we're at war with Vladimir Putin, and we need to stand firmly against him, help as much as possible with weapons, with aid, Ukraine. And then you've got the left wing. And here it's going to be a bit tricky for me to summarize the position of the left regarding Russia, because you've got several parties forming the coalition. You've got the socialists, the Greens, and the communists, who don't have the same position as France Unbowed, the radical left of Jean-Luc Mélenchon. In the past, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the radical left leader, criticized for not saying enough against Vladimir Putin, for showing a bit of complacency, and for not taking a clear stance. I was talking in Parliament with, in the corridors of Parliament, with Manuel Bompard, the man who was at the debate representing France Unbowed, and he was telling me we need to negotiate as soon as possible with Russia. Ukraine needs to negotiate as soon as possible with Russia. Peace needs to be brought about straight away. The problem is Ukraine's not in the best position to do so, and he was telling me it doesn't matter. Peace needs to be reached now, sooner than later.